Hey guys, I'm Mike Rivers with the Rivers Group over at Compass Real Estate. I am a Boston area native and a local real estate advisor. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the pros and cons of living in Boston's North End neighborhood. And if you think you might need some help navigating, buying, renting, selling anywhere at all in the city of Boston, please feel free to reach out at that number below. Let me know what it is you're looking for. I'm happy to do what I can to help you. I grew up just minutes from here. I have lived and worked in Boston for the last 20 years, and I absolutely love being a resource for people who are following our channel. So feel free to reach out anytime. Let me know what you need, and I'm happy to help. In the meantime, let's dive into the North End neighborhood, starting with an overview of the location. So the North End lies along the water just east of the West End and north of downtown Boston. Across the harbor to the north, you're going to find Charlestown, and to the east, East Boston. The North End is another hugely historic neighborhood of Boston as it sits on the original Shawmut Peninsula landmass and was not created by any landmaking projects like many of the other Boston neighborhoods. This historic neighborhood is known as Boston's Little Italy, and there are a number of positives and negatives about living here. So let's take a look at those pros and cons, starting off with the pros. Pro number one of the North End is the historic feel. The North End actually has the distinction of being Boston's oldest residential community. Being right on the water and adjacent to downtown Boston, it has always been somewhat of a commercial area as well, but is mainly known for housing local merchants, artisans, and craftsmen. Also home to patriot and revolutionary Paul Revere, whose home still stands in the neighborhood. It is the site of the famous Old North Church, the oldest standing church building in Boston, where Paul Revere had those two signal lanterns hung in the steeple to quickly alert the patriots about the movement of British troops. Revere's midnight ride to Lexington and Concord started right here in the North End, and you'll also find a statue of Paul Revere in Paul Revere Mall, sometimes referred to as the Prado Mall, just down the road from his historic home. The North End is also home to one of the few remaining hills that made up the Shawmut Peninsula and Boston's original footprint. Copp's Hill is the site of a historic burying ground that has headstones dating back to 1661 and is the second oldest cemetery in the city after King's Chapel Burying Ground, which is downtown by Government Center. Also, not exactly a positive element, but another random historical event occurring in the North End was the Great Molasses Flood that happened back in 1919 when a 2 million gallon molasses tank burst, and the wave of molasses killed 21 people and injured 150 more. For years after, you could still smell molasses in the air on hot summer days. Right now, a baseball field sits on the site of the old molasses facility, and if a giant molasses flood doesn't make you want to move to the North End, I don't know what will, but let's take a look at the next slightly more positive elements. Pro number two is the Italian culture here in the North End, and this might be what the North End is most known for. Now, a variety of different ethnic and religious backgrounds have made their homes here in the North End since those early colonial days, but the Italian population increased in greater numbers in the 20th century, and the other immigrant population seemed to begin moving into other parts of the city as Boston expanded with the constant land development projects. By 1920, Italian immigrants and their children made up nearly 90% of the North End population, and it became known as Little Italy, and the Italian character and culture still lives on in the North End through authentic family-owned restaurants and shops that attract both locals and tourists. St. Anthony's Feast is a massive celebration started in 1919 by immigrants from the town of Montefulcione, Italy, outside of Naples, where the celebration originated to celebrate their patron saint. What started as a small gathering of local immigrant families and friends to carry on a tradition from the old country has turned into a gigantic celebration, drawing hundreds of thousands of people to the North End neighborhood to parade, eat, and celebrate St. Anthony and really just the Italian culture here. The celebration in the town of Montefulcione, Italy on the last Sunday in August happens simultaneously with the North End celebration, and this is a very cool time of year to live here in the North End. Pro number three is the food scene here, and you can't really talk about the Italian culture without talking about the food. Yes, you can find exceptional Italian food outside of the North End, but short of going to Italy, this is generally where you want to be to experience some true Italian culture and cuisine. The North End also boasts some of the best seafood in Boston. Some of the popular spots in the neighborhood, starting with the cannoli joints, are Modern Pastry, Mike's Pastry, and Bovas Bakery that all serve excellent cannolis on top of countless other pastries and coffee. For a slice, you definitely want to check out Ernesto's, Locali, Galleria Umberto, and Pizzeria Regina, which has been at this location since 1926. For incredible Italian sandwiches, you have Salumeria Italiana, Rico Salumeria, and Table Mercato. For dinner, there's Carmelina's, Mamma Maria, Rico Ristorante, Quattro, Presa, Trisca, and Strega by famed Boston restaurateur Nick Verano. Then you have a couple of great oyster spots in Neptune Oyster and Mare Oyster Bar. The options here are virtually endless, but make sure you grab a reservation because it is very hard to get seats here, especially on weekends. Pro number 4 of living in the North End is the location. You are right on Boston Harbor here, and along the water's edge, you are going to have some great views across the harbor overlooking the estuaries of the Charles and Mystic Rivers. If you work downtown or in the West End or even in Charlestown or East Cambridge, you are going to have a relatively quick walk to the office. You are also right on top of the TD Garden here, so a great place for Bruins and Celtics fans out there, and it's actually pretty common to see the players getting dinner in the North End or actually living in this part of town. Tresca Restaurant is actually co-owned by NHL great Ray Bourque. There are no subway stops within the actual limits of the North End neighborhood, but close by you have the North Station stop and Haymarket, and also the Aquarium stop on the Blue Line just south of the North End. The central artery portion of the I-93 expressway once bordered the entire western edge of the North End, but was buried underground during the Big Dig. So you still have easy access to the highway living here, but now the Rose Kennedy Greenway lies above the underground highway and has actually helped reconnect this neighborhood to the rest of the city. Pro number 5 of living in the North End neighborhood is the community. And if a tight-knit community vibe is something that you're definitely looking for, you can absolutely find it here in the North End, especially if you are out there every day in the streets, frequenting the local shops, the local restaurants. The North End features a combination of old-school Italian-American families, many of whom are still running those local businesses. Then you have some college kids and young professionals who have been moving into the now trendy neighborhood, along with some wealthier folks finding their home along the pricier waterfront areas. Median age here is 37, and the neighborhood definitely has great energy and a great deal of pride, especially among those long-time residents and business owners. And that does it for the pros section, guys, but before I get into the drawbacks, please do me a favor and like this video. It helps other people find the video on YouTube, and it lets me know I'm providing some value for you here. And now let's dive into the drawbacks of living in the North End neighborhood. Drawback number 1 of living in the North End is the limited parking and very challenging driving. And if you're planning on driving frequently and living in this neighborhood, I would plan on spending the extra $100,000 or $200,000 on a private parking spot, or plan on living in a different neighborhood. Otherwise, you're going to spend half of your life trying to find a vacant parking space here, and you're probably going to end up in downtown at a garage for $40 for the night. Also, even though the North End is right off the expressway, which is really convenient, driving around the neighborhood itself can be a complete nightmare, especially in the interior of the neighborhood on those tight, busy streets. When I show property in this neighborhood, I make sure I stay on the outskirts along Commercial Street and away from the maze of the interior streets. This is an old historic neighborhood, and it was built up before cars were even around. So just keep in mind that the neighborhood wasn't really designed for the amount of vehicles and the amount of foot traffic that currently occupy it. A nearby parking garage is going to set you back $40 or $50 a day and $400 or $500 a month, but it's very tricky to find those monthly spots here in the North End. Drawback number 2 of living in the North End is the high cost of living. This is a terrific, central, water-adjacent location in Boston. It is a very trendy neighborhood with some amazing character. The cost of living here is high. That said, with this being a very historic neighborhood with some very old structures and very small living spaces, the neighborhood is not quite as pricey as some other popular areas in Boston like the Back Bay and the Seaport, but the condos on the water here are significantly pricier. As I do in all of my other neighborhood pros and cons videos, I'll run through all of the sales numbers and rental numbers over the last 12 months prior to posting this, so let's dive into those numbers now. Starting off with the median sales price of condos, the median sales price for studios is $480,000, one bedrooms $635,000, two bedrooms $975,000, and three bedroom condos, the median sales price is $1.6 million. And for rental rates, the studio apartments are going for $2,400 a month, the one bedroom apartments going for $2,800 a month, two bedrooms going for $3,800 a month, and the three bedroom apartments are going for $5,000 a month. Now, those are all the median rates for transactions that have occurred on the market, but plenty of things do happen off market. So if you're looking for something specific, let's connect now. Let me know what it is you're looking for, and let's do some digging to see if we can get you into the perfect home for your lifestyle. Drawback number 3 is the density, the crowds, and the noise. Homes are basically built right on top of each other in these old, historic, European-feeling neighborhoods, and since the streets were laid out before vehicle traffic was even being considered, this neighborhood gets chaotic and crowded, especially during peak tourist season, on weekends, on game nights, or when there is anything happening at the TD Garden. If you don't do crowds, do not live here. Much of this neighborhood is very dense and very high energy, and it gets packed frequently with regular noise complaints being made, especially along the main thoroughfares of Hanover Street and Salem Street. It's much quieter towards the waterfront areas away from the crowded streets, but get ready for some energetic city living if you decide to make your home here in this neighborhood. Drawback number 4 of living in the North End is the limited green space here. And unless you count Copp's Hill Burying Ground as a park, there is really only one true park here within the perimeter of the North End neighborhood, and that's on the northernmost edge along the water. Langone Park is a decent little park made up of a couple of baseball diamonds, a basketball court, some bocce courts, a public swimming pool, and a small playground. To get to any truly open green space, you have to head just south of the North End to Christopher Columbus Park or just west to the Rose Kennedy Greenway. The area's walkability means you can get to other large parks in Boston pretty easily, but just keep in mind that there are very few within the actual North End neighborhood itself. And guys, that does it for the pros and cons of living in Boston's North End neighborhood. If this was even remotely helpful, please do me a favor and like the video or leave a comment below. And feel free to ask me any questions, or if you are looking to move around anywhere in the city of Boston, please shoot me a text or give me a call at that number below, or fill out that form in the description. Let us know what it is you're looking for. We're happy to be a resource for you. We absolutely love helping out people who are following our channel and introducing people to these amazing neighborhoods in Boston. So please let us know what you need, and we're happy to help. Let's get you a home in Boston. And in the meantime, please subscribe for more great Boston real estate content. Take care, guys. Thanks again.